Welcome to Crossover the Pond, brought to you by 21 Media Productions and Sports Social. He's Drew Lasker, I'm Josh Sexton. Another special guest episode today, building up to the playoffs, and one that was going to be a conversation I'll be honest, I wasn't looking forward to as a Clippers fan, but it's become a whole different conversation now. Delighted to be joined by Harrison Faigen from SB Nation to talk about the Los Angeles Lakers. Harrison, my former editor at SB Nation. Long time no speak. How have you been, Harrison?
I've been better, Josh. I'm not gonna lie. When you guys when you guys reached out to me about this show last week, I think I was on a streak of agreeing to do a podcast like every single day this week about because I was like, oh man, the Lakers are fun. This will be awesome. Like I'm just gonna go talk to a bunch of people about how I think they can be kind of dangerous in the playoffs. And then I think it was like the day after I told you I was good to go. Like let's do it Wednesday. The entire season fell apart in like 24 hours. So, yeah, I'm all right.
Does it mean that we can blame you and your podcast overconfidence, possibly for them for Luka's and Austin's injuries?
Yeah, I think what I have to do is I have to stop podcasting. This is the last one, and then I'm gonna hang it up, just to save Luka and Austin's soft tissues.
Yeah, flew too close to the podcast, son.
Yeah.
Yeah, the first thing that came to my mind, Harrison, was obviously you're a California native. Is when is the last time you've been to Magic Mountain in those roller coasters? Because you've definitely been on one this season.
Yeah, I am not a big roller coaster guy, but my wife and I have been to Disneyland a bunch of times this year. And so like I have done that, and I will say a lot more fun than this Lakers season, or at least like the way this Lakers season is going now. It would be sort of like, if you were on the roller coaster and you were having a great time and you're like, oh man, parts of that were scary, but I think I think I'm gonna make it through, and then all of a sudden the cart it's like one of those fair rides that just goes careening off the tracks and everyone dies.
Horrible way for the Lakers season to end if that really is the case.
Yeah.
It sort of makes you think back, Harrison, to the start of the season, really. And I remember me and Drew sitting down to do this podcast for the first time and looking at LeBron James on the bench and kind of almost micro-analyzing his behavior, and it seems like we've come a long way from that, where the whole season seems to have just kind of crashed and burned. But can you kind of like cast your mind back to the start of the season, and especially coming into the season, what were the kind of main concerns for you as a Lakers fan in terms of LeBron, in terms of roster makeup, and all those sort of different kinds of issues that were present at the time?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it was LeBron. Like, the number one concern was LeBron's not just availability from an injury standpoint, but like, is he going to be on the team all year? Because there was not only was he hurt to start the year, which was like sort of unexpected coming into training camp. I don't think that had really been previously reported until he got there, and they were just like, yeah, no, he has sciatica. And so he's going to be out for a little bit. And so, you start from that point, but even going further back, you have the summer with Rich Paul, announcing the statement that, we're going to be opting in, but exploring our options and monitoring the Lakers' moves and whatever. And I was sort of like, okay, this has the ingredients to potentially be a disaster season when you have all these guys on 1-year deals, or like or prove it deals, or that are going to be free agents this summer, including LeBron himself, who apparently doesn't feel very valued by the Lakers based on sort of that statement and all that, like some of his like sort of commentary, the leaks over the summer, that sort of thing. And to go from that to, and then as the season gets going, they're really good. And then LeBron comes back, and they're like, there are some hiccups. And, there's like the whole, like, are they better without LeBron narrative that was always like kind of stupid, because it's like, LeBron is better than anyone. It's not like, it's not like they have Giannis on the bench back there, like to play over him. It's like, it's like, should LeBron play, or should like Rui Hachimura get like 20 more minutes a game? And it's, like, that's a pretty easy answer. But then eventually, like, LeBron, they had some issues with the three guys sort of fitting together. They haven't had a ton of time together, even still haven't had a ton of time together. But then, LeBron sort of started to settle into that third option role right around the trade deadline, and, embrace a lot of the dirty work things, and, taking less shots, like hitting the boards harder, playing harder on defense, more communication, all of that stuff. And, had really just sort of like embraced this third banana role. And and yeah, because it was what was best for the team. He was more capable of doing that than Luca and Austin are with their athletic limitations. And everything was sort of rounding into form. It looks like they could maybe be a dangerous playoff team, win at least a round, maybe two, and then all of a sudden, like Luca hamstring injury. I won't say out of nowhere because he's always sort of grabbing at his hamstrings and a leg area and whatever, and this is something that's plagued him throughout his career. But then you have that, and then you have the Austin rib thing that comes. It takes an extra day to come out because according to JJ Redick, like the Dallas medical staff MRI'd the wrong area, and it's just like this bizarre turn of events over the course of 2 days where it's like it goes from oh man, I'm excited to watch the Lakers against the Thunder and sort of see how they measure up against a contender after like this strong stretch to like, oh my god, like this is the worst team that I've ever seen, and I'm not sure that they can beat the tanking Mavs even if LeBron goes for like a 30-point triple double.
Yeah, that's ironic. You mentioned, the Austin Reeves injury, the Luka Doncic injury, and the narrative around LeBron the entire season, him being 41. There was rumblings that he's a step slow, and all of these things. This is an opportunity for you to give. Let's call this the LeBron James flowers segment. Isn't it ironic that he's the only one that's still standing after all of this?
It is crazy, especially considering, like if you would have told me last summer LeBron was going to be the healthiest of those guys, I would have sort of been like, okay, yeah, I mean, he's like a freak of nature. He doesn't really get hurt all that often. And so, maybe Luca and Austin step on somebody's ankle or whatever, that would have been believable to me. But then when the season starts and he has sciatica, well, literally like an old man injury, and then, he's in and out of the lineup, he's like, not going to hit 65 games like relatively early, and about halfway through, it was pretty clear he was not going to hit 65 and not going to be eligible for all NBA. And so to go from all of that health stuff to all of a sudden it's like, hey, LeBron, can you put the team on your back and like carry us through a first round playoff series to give Luca and Austin enough time to come back is crazy. And like, I was joking with someone the other day that like, LeBron's greatest GOAT argument might be winning a first round series with this roster in the current state that it's in right now. Because if he could do that at 41, it's like, MJ didn't even make the playoffs at 41. And like if LeBron can lead Rui and like point guard Luke Kennard past whatever team they face in the first round, like it would be again like one of the most astounding things he's done in like a career full of astounding things. And yeah, he you just really can't say enough about like how professional and prepared he is to be able to like, and how much he's mastered the ramp up process to be able to go from like, okay, I missed the entire preseason, I missed the first 2+ weeks of the season, and so I'm just going to slow down my ramp up a little bit. It's going to take a little longer, but then by the time the playoffs roll around, like I'm going to be looking like LeBron James again at 41, which is just it's crazy.
I had a real Clippers PTSD flashback there when you said point guard Luke Kennard. Sorry, Harrison, you'll have to forgive me for that. It kind of makes you think about the roller coaster that Drew referred to as well, even in terms of narratives that have been there over the course of the season. Because I can kind of remember jumping on this podcast and listen, I'm someone who's always going to try and disparage the Lakers and their chance of a championship if
I
I
don't
can,
blame you.
but I was coming on the podcast a lot of times earlier in the season saying the offense looks really good, defense looks really bad, and ultimately, the point differential thing that's been going all season, they were the kind of things I was almost using to kind of try and discredit the Lakers and their championship chances. And yet it seemed really that actually what was kind of going on in the background was, the team were getting closer together. You were getting more buy-in out of LeBron, even though, there's been a DeAndre Ayton sideshow, which has gone on probably since you acquired him, really, if we're being totally
His
honest about
entire
it, sort of
career,
digging.
really.
Yeah,
I think like not,
yeah.
just the entire DeAndre Ayton career has been a little bit of a sideshow. It's the B plot line in the TV show that you're watching that you're like, why are we cutting away to this storyline so often? Like this character doesn't seem that important, but it's like, oh, he's drinking crunk juice today, and okay.
And yet again in my Clippers PTSD bag, there's a DeAndre Ayton alley-oop to win the Suns an overtime playoff game. Anyway, we're gonna have to stop doing that because I'm giving you way too much to laugh at here. But like that's the kind of thing is with this roller coaster of all these narratives. Actually, the Lakers were just kind of clicking into gear really and doing that progressively over the course of the season to the point where you hit the run that you hit, and you're one of the best teams in the NBA at that point.
Yeah, I mean, you also had sort of like Austin had some health issues where like he was in and out with like a groin thing and like some other injuries, and Luca didn't really miss significant time, but he was clearly dealing with like some lower leg stuff that seemed to sort of dissipate after the All-Star break. I remember like again speaking of the roller coaster, one of the storylines of this year was Lakers fans being and I'll add myself to this, like being sort of a little annoyed that he was playing in the All-Star game after missing like their last like 3 or 4 games before the All-Star break. And it's like, is this really a good idea? Like, if you weren't healthy enough to play in games that matter, like you're gonna go out here and suit up for that. And it ended up being fine, but like this is the kind of thing that fans worry about. And I also think like JJ Redick deserves a ton of credit for just sort of how good of a regular season coach he has shown himself to be over his first 2 years. Like he just does a good job, against the Thunder without like the entire like top 6 of their roster notwithstanding. He does a good job of having them ready to play and compete every single night and giving them advantages in the regular season based on the roster that is out there and sort of figuring out the team that he has I think he's shown a lot more flexibility this year with sort of his defensive coverages and his lineup deployment and that sort of thing. And so, TBD sort of where he goes down as a playoff coach. Last year was obviously pretty bad. This year, I don't know how much we're going to be able to take away from it realistically on like, I don't know how good of a coach you would have to be. Like, I don't know if Phil Jackson is getting this team in its current state, like through like a first round series. But JJ, I think also deserves some credit here for also just the way the guys have bought in and like getting LeBron to realize over the course of the season, okay, this is actually what I need to do for the team to have a chance on a night to night basis. This is how I can best help the Lakers. Like that's coaching and that's working together and that's like, having open communication and not losing guys buy-in and all of that stuff. And so, yeah, I think, it was a great season until it wasn't.
Well, you mentioned JJ Redick. He usually loves to use these reference points, right? So for you specifically, what moment during the season, what game for you personally following this team so closely that you were like, maybe we actually do have a chance to make a run? What was the reference point for
Honestly,
you?
it was I don't know if this was the first point, but it was the most stark one, and it was the Nuggets game recently, where like I'll be honest, like I was seeing my parents that night. They were on like a little vacation near where I live, and I was at dinner. I was watching the game, like that kind of stuff, and it just like it was coming down the stretch in the fourth quarter, and they were down like 10-ish, and I was just kind of like, okay, I'm just gonna start my drive home. Like it's late, like they're not coming back from this. I've seen this movie before. And then I almost didn't even put the game on in the radio in the car because I was like, why do I want to listen to them like play out the stretch of a loss? I'll just listen to some music. And then I just decided I was like, I can listen to music after the game's over. Let me just see if they do something incredible. And then I listened to like maybe the most fun way I could have possibly listened to that game, which was like local Lakers announcer John Ireland like just slowly losing his mind and like burying the team and then being like, oh my god, they're back. Like they came back, and then going back and watching that game and just like the fact that they were able to show that much resilience against again a more flawed version of the Nuggets than we've seen in past years, but still like somebody who's been a bit of a boogeyman for this Lakers team, and sort of a team that has always had their number. Like it felt more real at that point when they were able to sort of like when they just didn't let go of the rope and they kept playing. And like there were a lot of Lakers teams I feel like over the past couple of years where they would have just sort of thrown in the towel at that point, and this one didn't. And I think that it's just I think all of these guys were believing in each other, and like really the chemistry seemed to be really good. And so yeah, it did feel like it was geared up for, again, like we've been talking about talking around this. Like I don't think that they were going to win a title this year, barring like even pre-injuries, like barring significant injury luck in their favor or something like that. Like it was going to take a tweaked ankle from OKC or San Antonio, maybe both. I think that I would have liked their chances against anyone from the East, but those two teams in the West I think would have been really difficult, and probably insurmountable. But it was still like they were giving themselves a puncher's chance during what could have just been like a gap year while they were waiting for cap space this summer, which is what it seemed like it was going to be from the start of the year. So to go from like this is just sort of like we're biding time till next year to like this is really fun, I like these guys, like I hope some of them come back, to now what has been like you said, Drew, quite the roller coaster.
Yeah, to quote some of your favorite memes, Harrison. And I promise I'm not doing this with any hate in my heart, but you've almost gone from the run it back season to the can't judge this team season. Would you say?
The Lakers are always sort of like vacillating between run it back or like you can't judge this team without like I think in this case they finally like the guys that are injured are actually guys that you can't judge this team without. Like in past years they've been like, well, yeah, they're losing every close game, but like Gabe Vincent's not healthy. So I don't know what you expect from them. And it's like, I have a feeling there's other teams that are missing a guy that it's like Gabe Vincent's level on their bench. Most not like a lot of nights that are not just like hopeless dead in the water. Yeah, the saddest one of those was the 2021-22 can't judge this team without Trevor Ariza, and then he just basically never played. Like I think he did end up suiting up a few times. Like that was the last year of his career. He was clearly done at that point. But there was like a good couple months at the beginning of that season where Frank Vogel was like, we just can't judge this team without Trevor Ariza and Kendrick Nunn. And it's like, yeah, I think we could. I think we were able to.
There's a lot of NBA teams who can judge it without Kendrick Nunn, fortunately.
I
want to talk about.
Hold on, that's Greek League MVP Kendrick Nunn, okay?
Yeah, behave, Josh.
Sorry, everyone. I want to talk about the word buy-in, or two words buy-in, I guess I should say, because you referenced, JJ Redick and kind of, I guess, fans in a way warming to him and his ideas and his schemes. I almost don't think when I watched JJ Redick as a coach last season, the main thing I noticed was like schematically issues. I think the tactical side of the coaching was kind of always there. I was always worried, particularly being Lakers coach, where the eyes are on you, about those moments where things did get a bit more tense and how, he would always kind of approach them in a very Duke basketball way is the way that I would say it, where it was always like confrontation first. And I know that's still the case now. We've seen it with Vanderbilt on the bench the other night even, but how much do you think he deserves credit for the buy-in of guys like LeBron to being the third star on this team? How much to get Austin Reeves to grow into a role as the second star, to get DeAndre Ayton from saying that he's not Clint Capella to suddenly I think he maybe is Clint Capella?
I think I will say with respect to Clint Capella, I think DeAndre Ayton has had a better season. But it was, the quote was indicative of like, again, the whole DeAndre Ayton experience. It's like, why did you say this right before playing the Rockets, like with media in the room? Like you've been around the league long enough to know that like people are listening, there's tape recorders going, like, what, why are you doing this? And that's what the team needs you to be, prime Clint Capella. But yeah, I think JJ deserves a ton of credit for, I've always gotten the sense that he gets buy-in from the guys pretty well. Like I think a lot of the sort of like, hot-headedness, reputation stuff obviously comes from like his time as a player. And then also like his interactions with the media could be, again, I don't cover the team day to day, like on I haven't covered the team actually in JJ's entire tenure. I haven't like gone to practice or games or whatever. I'm not saying this because he hurt my feelings or something, but he could be incredibly condescending with the media. Like when you watch his post game things and whatever, and it was just like, you were sort of watching it like, man, I don't know if this is like, if he's getting like this worked up after every single loss, like where you can like see his gray hairs coming in and he's like, like yelling at beat reporters over like he thinks that they're not tracking offense right. It's like, is he gonna last like in this job? And I think that this year he seems to have mellowed out a little bit. I don't know if he sort of like evaluated himself a little bit over the course of the offseason, was just like, look, I can't, like my blood pressure's through the roof, like I can't, my doctors are saying I can't do this anymore, like I need to meditate, I need to like I don't know what he's done, but like he seems a little bit more chill this year compared to last year, a little bit more comfortable in his skin, a little bit less like, there was the moment last year in the playoffs that I think was sort of indicative of like his general sort of, attitude and way of being, was when he got really offended when somebody asked him, like, if one of his assistants like told him that maybe he shouldn't play the same five guys an entire second half of a playoff game. And he was like, oh, would you ask a veteran coach that? And like was getting like really upset about it and whatever, and like took it as like questioning his authority and know-how and whatever. Whereas this year he like seems to be much more like even keeled about that kind of stuff. You mentioned the showdown with Vando. I think those two from my observations of like their interactions on the bench and just like observing, how JJ deploys and doesn't deploy Vando, I don't think that their relationship is like great. But I think for most of the guys on that, which is going to be the case with every coach and every team is going to have guys that they don't get along with or aren't their guys or whatever. Like I think he's tried to make Ayton one of his guys, and I think like that has been like, honestly, he deserves a ton of credit for that, because like when they signed DeAndre Ayton, I was like, oh, JJ is gonna like demand this guy get cut by like week 4, like he's gonna be losing his mind. And he has like, I think, seen that sometimes like, tough love is not the only sort of love. Like sometimes you got to try and lift guys up and inspire them and whatever, and there's different personality types and different guys take different feedback differently. And I think he has overall like really done a good job of like managing the locker room. And really, like when you look back to his entire tenure with the Lakers, he's like, the amount of times the team has completely changed is like sort of insane for less than 2 seasons. And he just keeps adapting and keeps changing the offense, keeps changing the defense, keeps guys bought in, keeps guys ready to play when they have to play. Like, all of a sudden Bronny's in the rotation, and like even before all these injuries, like Bronny was in the rotation and like sort of contributing. And again, like I think that he seems to have like a pretty good knack for I think he has his weak spots for sure, but he seems to have a pretty good knack for like relating to the guys, and for the most part keeping them like wanting to play hard for him and not feeling like he's like throwing them under the bus constantly, even when he does, because they take it as accountability.
Yeah, appreciate that insight. We touched on Luca. I believe he's the only player under contract for next year, if I'm not mistaken. Um,
So
is that?
yeah, sort of, but like Marcus Smart and DeAndre Ayton have player options. I think
Oh, right, yeah.
Vando's under contract, but like there's not very many guys. Bronny's under contract. There's not very many guys.
Right. Okay. So we know Luca's going to be there. A lot of the narrative has been about LeBron James and what he's going to do, but I want to focus on Austin Reeves because I think his situation is really murky. Personally, what do you think he really is, and what do you think he's going to get on the market? And do you actually think he's going to be in a Laker uniform next year?
I do think he's going to be back with the Lakers. I would be fairly surprised if that wasn't the case, just because, it's who is he signing with? I guess like teams can always make moves when they, we've seen, how many times have we seen in the last couple off seasons where it's like there's no cap space around the league, and then like Miles Turner all of a sudden is acquired by the Bucks because they waived and stretched Dame, and like whatever, like teams find ways to do the things that they want to do. And so I'm not going to say like, I don't see any other options for him entirely, because I probably just can't see them. But it just, all it takes is one team like really wanting him and trying to free up enough space on their books to make an offer. But if you look at the other teams with cap space besides the Lakers, it's like the Jazz, it's the Nets. Like it's teams that either like aren't trying to win now, probably in the Nets case, or like in the Jazz's case, like they have probably like their like their guys set a little bit, like with JJJ coming in, and like they got Walker Kessler coming back, and they have their young point guard whose name I'm blanking on right now. So I think like there just aren't as many options around the league for him to get the money that he's going to want to get. And I also think that the Lakers value him, and they, one of the surest fire things, ways to get yourself re-signed with the Lakers is if Rob Pelinka can take credit for you. And like Rob is able to take credit for Austin Reeves as like an undrafted guy, and like, oh, this is an organizational win and we developed this guy and whatever. And like, I think that honestly, all things being equal, I think Austin would want to be back. I think he really likes LA. I think he likes the organization. I would be fairly surprised, like if he wanted to go anywhere else. It seems like him and Luka have a great relationship. But again, it always comes down to money. And if the Lakers try, the only way that I can see him leaving is if he feels disrespected by the Lakers offer. Like we see, and that is something that we've seen in the past with this front office, where they just basically told Alex Caruso, they're like, we don't think you're good enough to get the money that you're, and he's like, well, but other teams are offering me this money, and they're like, well, good luck. And obviously that didn't work out. Alex Caruso, different caliber of player than Austin Reeves. Austin is like, I think like a fringe all-star, probably would have made the all-star game this year, if he had stayed healthy. And so I think he's really good. I think the athletic limitations are obviously like very real and apparent. And like anybody who watches him can see that like he is a relatively slight of frame guy. He's gotten stronger over the course of his career, but he's still like, he's never going to be a guy that's able to like lock down on defense and do much at a positive level other than like chasing around screens is something that he's shown to be pretty good at. But like, he's not, he's going to be a guy that teams try to hunt. Honestly, acquiring Luke Kennard has sort of freed him up from that, because like when Luke was on the floor, teams were like, wait, actually this guy's way worse, so let's try and pick on him. And like Austin's legs got a little bit of a break. And so I think he's really good. But I've really grown to like enjoy him as a personality and like obviously as a player. It would suck if he would, especially in this era where like so often your team's favorite players don't stay that long. Like it would be cool if he did stay and was able to like remain with the Lakers for, if not his entire career, at least most of it, and sort of like have that journey with the fans. And so I do think that he will be back. And I'm at this point, I'm not sure if I answered your actual question, but yeah, like I think he's really good, and I do think that like I would be lying if I said there wasn't a little bit of concern with like paying him like $40 million a year, but I also I don't see how you get better by not re-signing him, and so I just don't know really what other options they have.
I also have to apologise, Harrison, because I did the thing before where someone says they're blanking and my mind immediately goes blank. I think it was Keontae George you were referring to, the Utah Jazz point guard.
I believe you are correct, yeah.
Yeah, that's the one. You talked about Austin Reeves being your team's sort of favourite player. I don't know if you meant that in a direct sense, but I want to talk about the best player on the team because it's really been a virtuoso effort from Luka Doncic this season, and of course he's benefited from being a part of the Lakers' three-headed monster, which is Luka, Rob Pelinka, and Nico Harrison. How much credit do you give to Rob Pelinka for pulling off the heist of all time, the biggest heist of all time? But also, how much credit do you give to Luka for basically everything the Lakers have been able to achieve so far this season?
I've struggled with the like how much credit does Rob Pelinka get for this, because it's like like if your most insane friend just came to you and was like, "Hey, I want to give you my Ferrari." And you would just say yes. Like, do you deserve credit as like a shrewd negotiator? They're like, I don't know. Like he obviously like he made the trade, so he deserves some level of credit for it. He had the relationship with Nico Harrison to get that deal done, and so that's like credit for that and everything. But it's like I'm just not sure that there's a single GM in the league other than Nico Harrison who would not have made that trade of like Anthony Davis for Luka. Like Nico Harrison would have been like, no, hell no, I'm not taking that defense last loser. But I think most of the rest of the league probably would have made that trade, and so it's like he deserves some credit, and there is a certain coldness to it of like not only being willing to make a move that's like probably going to get someone who like apparently you considered a friend like fired, and you had to know that when you were doing it, and also like to just be like, hey, Anthony Davis, you want us a title, like good luck in Dallas, stop asking me for a center. And all of that. So like there is, he deserves some credit, but I think most of it is just like right place, right time, right friend having a mental break, all of that good stuff. And Luka's been awesome this year. I'm so glad that I kept a lot of my thoughts on him early in the season, the Christmas Day game especially, in group texts instead of on Twitter, because I was getting very irritated with his complaining with the refs. And then it was sort of this like hilarious, miraculous turnaround that is, I think, indicative of the entire Luka experience, that he gets his 15th tech and all of a sudden he turns into an MVP candidate for like 2 months while he has to avoid complaining. He's like, instead of trying to like argue his case to the refs, he's like getting back on defense. He's talking. He's like doing all of the things that like including Nico Harrison, probably thought he would never do at a consistent level. And, all of a sudden, wouldn't you know it, like it puts him into the MVP conversation. Like he wasn't going to win, but he was going to finish probably like at worst fourth on the ballot. And, like had really established himself as that level of guy. And like, if he would have played like that the whole season, I think there would have been a real argument for him to get MVP. He got nominated, guys. I don't know. This sort of flew under the radar. He got nominated for Defensive Player of the Month in the West last year, which like I know is like I think they only just started doing that award this year or last year or whatever, and like it's sort of like, again, it's like a fake award handed out by the league. Like nobody gets like a plaque and like keeps it over that or whatever, but just the fact that he was even nominated is crazy.
Hang the banner,
like,
Harrison. Hang the banner.
yeah. Look, nominated for one Defensive Player of the Month for March. We're putting it up there in the rafters. It's like Luka does play defense, sometimes for a month when he doesn't have any when he can't get any more texts, and so he has to stop yelling at the refs and get back. And so like he's awesome, and he is someone that can be really frustrating for those reasons, because of like you see the potential and you see how good he could be if he focused on the right things, and you even see that he can impact the game defensively when he wants to and when he's focused on it. He just doesn't do it a lot of the time. And there are like, especially early on in the season, where he was just sort of like, you would see him like call for a switch or just get blown by or just like pointing, do the pointing like that was supposed to be your guy thing, just so that it doesn't look as bad. And to go from that to like nearly leading the league in steals for like a couple months, and like really getting out there, his defensive playmaking in that Lakers zone was a huge part of their success over that like really good run that they had. And again, like I don't think he's not going to win a Defensive Player of the Year in his career or anything like that, but like it's just like you want to just take that and just bottle it and just be like, play like this all the time. If you just played like this all the time, you would win MVPs, you would win titles, you would do all of this stuff. And it's just, again, the question is going to be when he comes back, probably next season, because I know he's going and getting some like maybe you guys can tell me about what calf treatments are available in Europe with your healthcare and all of that. But he's going over there to get some experimental whatever, like stem cell probably stuff into his calf, but I don't know if that's going to result in him actually making a return this year. But whenever he does return, it's like, okay, like you've shown me what you can do, I want to see you do it more, and that's the standard that you're going to be held to. This is, again, I say this with all due respect to like Mavs fans and all of that stuff, but like this is not the Dallas Mavericks fan base where it's like good enough that you're their guy and like they drafted you and like you're supposed to be their next Dirk, and they just want you to stay forever and be really good, and hopefully you can get at least one title in your career. Like when you're with the Lakers and they don't have that fan base expects stars to win titles, plural. It's part of the reason why LeBron, I think, doesn't get his like really honestly just due like respect from the fan base all the time, is because he only got one title. And I think it's harder to repeat in the NBA today than it ever has been, and all of that context aside, but like Luka is a guy that should be capable of being at the center of that kind of team that is able to win multiple rings. And it's just going to be like, but he has to contribute to that, and it can't just be offensively. And I am curious to see like does this latest calf injury continue to sort of spur his like physical fitness evolution and all of that, like his readiness to play? Are there things that he can work on in the offseason to sort of like continue to try and avoid these lower body injuries? I don't know, but I would imagine that like this, again, when you're playing that well and then the season gets taken away from you, if that's not a wake-up call to like, what else can I do to try and avoid this? I don't know what is. And again, I'm not saying it's his fault, but like is there anything that he can do to lessen the percentages of things like this happen? Because we've seen it happen throughout his career. And are there exercises that he can do, muscles that he can work to sort of avoid that? And like, if he can, then I hope that this is sort of that wake-up call.
I believe it's a horse placenta, by the way, is the thing. If you Google about Manchester City manager Pep Guardiola and the strange treatments he used to get his players to do, horse placenta injections are apparently what I believe Luka Doncic.
Is that a real thing?
I should tweet this because I'm sure I could go viral off this as a combination of both football Twitter and NBA Twitter. I think I perfectly straddle the two. So yes, I mean allegedly.
I'm going
I
to be
should throw
wondering all day if you were making this up. I'm actually going to choose not to Google it. I'm choosing to believe it that Man U is just injecting horse placenta. That's like their chosen recovery method.
Yeah, I mean, for someone who dealt with many hamstring injuries in my career, one thing I could tell you that the percentages is high that they reoccur. Obviously, Luka's had a hamstring injury before, so those muscle fibers don't get better. It's almost kind of like they kind of like glue themselves together once you strain them or tear them, which Luka currently has a grade 2. Which brings me to this interesting point. Again, getting your perspective, because we talked about Luka, we talked about Austin Reeves, and you said you would be shocked if Lakers didn't re-sign him. We know that it's going to come at a big price tag. Um, do you think in today's NBA, because I was told by an assistant coach that in today's NBA to win, you need depth, you need length, and you need youth. Specifically with the Lakers, do you think they can win with two superstars? Or do you think when you look at someone like OKC, you look at San Antonio, they got that superstar, they got depth, they got length, and they got youth. Do you think they can win a championship with Austin Reeves? And because if you sign Austin Reeves, you're not going to have a lot of cash to go get a lot of depth. So what's your personal take on how to build a team now?
No, I mean, I think that you're exactly right, and like what that assistant coach is exactly right. That like that is the recipe in the modern NBA. You just look at the last couple title teams, and it's like fairly apparent what led to those. You have like the Thunder, you have the Nuggets were a little more top heavy, I guess you would say. Like they were probably like really reliant on their top six in a way that like the last two title winners weren't. That Warriors team that won was a little top heavy, but again, like you almost have to like 2020 to 2022, you almost have to like take out as like, are these repeatable models, just because like every single season there for like a 3-year run was like these circumstances that will never repeat again, like with the pandemic and all of that stuff. And so like I do think that what we are seeing, especially with OKC, like where it's like, how many teams would OKC's 11 through 15 guys like be like their sixth man? And like that's just like a level of depth that like you very rarely see, if ever, in the NBA. And it's why like OKC's roster is like the best argument for expansion. It's like Sam Presti should not be able to hoard all these guys. This is not fair to them. This is not fair to their careers. Like they need to be able to go get their bag as like a scoring six man on like a mediocre team, instead of being like the emergency stay ready guy for OKC. But like as far as winning a title with those two, I think there are real concerns about that, and it was something that I was certainly more concerned about earlier in the year when Luka's defensive effort was, to put it charitably, waxing and waning, mostly waning. And it's like, can the Lakers hide both of these guys? And can you play defense in the modern NBA with two guys that, even if you can say like, okay, Luka, you don't have to hide, teams aren't really going to ISO on him and that kind of thing. He's big enough that like he's going to make it difficult enough, like when he locks in, like he's not going to get totally embarrassed. And Austin's going to fight hard, and maybe they can send help. Like they're not complete zeros, but they're not plus defensive players most of the time in their career. And so you are having to scheme around them. And part of the reason that Marcus Smart is like a plus minus god for the Lakers this year is just because like when he plays with Luka and Austin, like those two guys, all of a sudden like their legs are freed up from having to chase one of the harder defensive assignments on the other team. Because again, it's like, you have this weird sort of wonky roster where it's like DeAndre Ayton's certainly not a defensive stopper, although like he's played his role this year, and like he's played hard defensively, but he's not a guy that you're going to be like, okay, let's have him chase around the team's best perimeter threat. Obviously as a center, you're not going to have 41-year-old LeBron do it. And so, if your other starters are Rui, Luka, and Austin, like that's just a rough, defensive team where it's like, okay, do we want Rui doing this? Like he's not good at it, but I guess at least, like it saves Austin and Luka from having to, but those guys might be better at it even if they're still not good. And then it's like Marcus Smart just is like such a normal 3-and-D style role player to put into, that by comparison to Rui or any of the Lakers' other options. That, I think how much of a difference he's made shows the types of players the Lakers need to go and get. And that, like, if they can build out that depth and try and, like, get some wings, it's why, like, I don't know if we're going to talk about the cap space stuff later or whatever. Like, when people talk about, like, the Giannis thing this summer, like, I would rather get in on the aftermath of a deal like that and go get someone like OG Anunoby, or like one of these guys that, like, the other team is trying to, like, move to get picks to then give for the star or whatever. Because I think the Lakers, like, I think you can build title contender around Luka and Austin. I just think that the rest of the roster has to look way different than it does currently, and that's going to be like an ongoing project that's going to take some luck, and it's going to take some real sort of shrewd, like, team building know-how that frankly I'm not sure that Rob Pelinka has displayed. And so, that is almost as much my concern as anything, of, like, does the basketball brain trust at the top of this organization value defense, rebounding, all of that stuff enough, or are they just all about, like, is it Rob with, like, sort of agent brain just going, like, get me the best, like, a collection of the best scorers? And we've seen a lot of their rosters that have sort of just looked like that. It's like, hey, like, let's sort NBA.com by points per game and go get the guys, that like are that are the cheapest available there. So, like, I long story short, like, I do think that they can contend with those two guys, but I think it's just going to take a much different roster than they have currently if they want to seriously contend. Because you look at OKC, you look at San Antonio, you look at even Denver, like, could potentially make some moves this offseason. And you look at the East, like, the Celtics are only going to be better next year with Tatum sort of more fully integrated. And it's like, there's a lot of good teams, and the Lakers are going to have to get to that level, and they're just not right now.
I might let Drew take the cap space question, just because I'm sort of looking before the off-season future really now. The Lakers playoff future, obviously there's so many variables up in the air now. Like, will Luka be able to get this miracle treatment in Spain? Will it bring him back at any point in the first round? As you said before, can LeBron take them to the second round? Will Austin Reeves be okay at any point during that stretch as well? But I want you to kind of put your crystal ball on the table here, Harrison, and look and sort of imagine, I guess, what is the most important thing from the Lakers role players that could show up in the playoffs that you think will get them through? If we kind of imagine we end up with a quite balanced scenario of all those different variables we have there. Let's say it's, if I was to offer you a few of these, it's Marcus Smart shooting 40% from three throughout the playoffs. It's Jake LaRavia shooting 10 threes in a game, or something like that just something from the role players that gets the Lakers through. A DeAndre Ayton game, for example, what would you sort of bet on being the thing that either can happen or you would most like to see happen to get the Lakers through?
Yeah, I mean, I think number one, like, Marcus Smart hitting 40% of his threes, I take it means he's healthy for the playoffs, because he's been, like, day to day with like soreness for like 3 weeks, and it's like, wait, can you just, like, announce whatever injury he actually had? Like, like, you're just like, oh yeah, no, like, we're gonna decide on, like, game time, and then it's like every time game time gets there, no, it's fine, he doesn't need to play. And, like, right now, I get it, you may as well bubble wrap him when you want to have everybody as healthy as possible for the playoffs, given how shorthanded you're going to be. I would definitely take, of those options, like, I do not under any circumstances want Jake LaRavia shooting 10 threes, given his percentages this year. And, honestly, there aren't a lot of things that would, like, shock me about, like, this Lakers team anymore, given the roller coaster that we've been on. But Jake LaRavia even taking 10 threes actually would shock me at this point. Like, he looks like I'm trying not to make fun of you too much, but, like, it's like, he has been a rough shooter this year, and, like, it looks like it's gotten to him. And so, like, I would definitely go Marcus shooting 40%, just because I think that he's by far their most valuable role player, and that would allow him to stay on the floor in a way, and, like, not have teams play off of him in a way that would be incredibly valuable for the Lakers offense, with or without, like, those other two guys. If I'm actually taking out my crystal ball, I don't know that I see them winning a first round series, just given all of the things that they have working against them. But, like, I think if they were going to get there, it would take something like that. Like, it would take Marcus Smart, just, like, going playoff Rondo for a round and just, like, hitting every single three he takes, and, like, sort of just, like, off the dribble threes, whatever. Like, it's like Marcus Smart is like, hey, you said you need playmaking, I got you. Like, and, like, he's going back to sort of the things that got him shipped out of Boston but the Lakers actually need it. Like they need him to, take more shots and, be an irrational confidence guy. And, that's the one for me where I think that would make the biggest difference. Healthy stars or no.
Well, I'm shocked that you even think they have 1% chance of winning the first round series without Luke and possibly without Reeves. And if you think they have a inkling of a chance, who is the best matchup for them?
Yeah, the only reason that I think that they have an inkling of a chance is just that the Rockets look like they want to quit. And so it's like, it can, if you put a stoppable force against a very movable object, like which one of them wins out? It's like, is it the Lakers with like without their stars, or like the Rockets who hate each other and are like sort of want to get to the off season? Like, do the Rockets have enough pride to be like, no, okay, we need to beat this late. Like, I know, like I don't want to see you guys anymore either, but we need to at least win the first round. And so that's the only thing that sort of, to answer both questions at once, that gives me like an inkling of hope. And also just frankly, like how good LeBron has looked. Like if LeBron can sort of, activate playoff mode one more time, it's like, can you steal game one? And then all of a sudden it's like, you have a bunch of days between series. Like, is he able to sort of ramp up? And like, is JJ able to scheme up some stuff? And do the Rockets sort of start to crumble like in the face of adversity? Like, again, this is like very like the golden path of like things that are probably not going to happen, but they would need like a lot of them to go right for it to happen. But like, I'm not going to rule it out solely for that reason, just because like that team has looked so just like mediocre to bad this year at times. And I do think that like, I think that the Lakers would at the very least come up with like a pretty good game plan to try and get through that series and steal a couple games and give themselves a shot for maybe even Luka or Austin to come back like late in the series, depending on how much time between games and like if, this horse placenta is able to sort of get Luka ready to go, and all of that stuff.
Yeah, we're trying to get you to make a really silly prediction here, Harrison, just so we can clip that up and get that all over the socials. But
I think the Lakers are going to sweep the Rockets in the first round.
There we go.
Appreciate you playing the game.
Yeah.
Appreciate you playing the game. I might get you to make one more prediction here on that kind of cap space question then, because you've already said you imagine Austin Reeves being back in a Lakers uniform next season. Who else of that roster would you like to see coming back? Would you like to see LeBron James coming back and retiring as a Laker, or do you think that's just a foregone conclusion that he's gone now? What kind of moves can you see the Lakers making in the offseason?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, and I never would have guessed this. Even a couple of years ago, if you would have told me this, I would have been like, that's blasphemy. But like, I would be devastated if Marcus Smart is not back. Like, I have grown to love the Marcus Smart experience. He is like, again, I can see why he drives some people insane, but he just like has such a knack for making an incredible defensive play at the right time. He plays so hard. He is like I've never seen someone less afraid, sometimes to their own detriment, of standing in there and taking a hit, and things like that. And like, I just love the way he plays. I love the way that he competes. And like, I would be really bummed out if they didn't like, try to figure out a way that like, hey, can you opt out of your player option and we'll give you a, longer term deal for a little bit less money and like sort of, but more guaranteed years or things like that. I think if you would have asked me this a week ago when we were originally like planning on recording, I would have said I think LeBron's probably going to be back. Like, it looks like he's sort of embraced where he needs to be at this stage of his career. I'm not sure who the better options are out there for him. He just talked about how he hates playing in Cleveland now. I think that was more to do with the hotels that they stay at when they're there, but it's also like, LeBron, like you surely still own houses in the area. You don't have to stay in whatever Cleveland hotel the Lakers are staying in. But like, given how weird their season has been and how like, so I don't know, like, is that a better option for him than coming back with the Lakers and sort of like playing this role that he's shown that he's like, if anything, overqualified for, as like this third banana to Luka and Austin? And, it's just going to be a matter of like, we sort of talked about this with Austin, but I think this almost matters more in some ways with LeBron, because even though the money's going to be less, of like making him not feel disrespected. Because I think that last summer, like, I think that he felt like for the first time in his career, like unwanted probably. And like, I understand why the Lakers did not just hand him another 1+1 deal. I don't think that would have been necessarily the right decision, but I also understand if you're LeBron, it's like, I'm maybe the best player ever. And you like, oh wait, what? You're not just giving me the contract I want? And like, this is like, he's 40 years old. He just turned 41. Like, imagine being 40 and experiencing rejection for the first time. Like that's got to be tough, you know? And like, it's not that surprising that he was sort of like going through it, you know, fairly publicly. And I think that the Lakers, like if the Lakers try to play hardball with him and they say, you know, LeBron, like we know that you're not getting the mid-level anywhere else, so like just take the minimum or you can leave. Like then, you know, he's not going to stay, because sort of an NBA truism that I swear by is like, guys are very rarely going to take less to come back. Like they will take less to prove you wrong for lowballing them somewhere else. But they will not take less to come back to you, just because of sort of the pride factor of it. And it's like, I get it. Like if my employer said, Harrison, will you take like will you take a 50% pay cut and come back and do your job? I'd be like, no, you know, and, so like, I totally get it. But I think that, I think that as long as they make him feel valued and, you know, they are willing to give him what he feels like as a fair offer, even if it's maybe not the amount of money that he has been earning previously in his career, then I do think that there's a pretty good chance that he'll be back. I don't think that his family wants to leave LA. Like his daughter's still in school here. He's a short flight from his son playing at Arizona. He's literally on the team with his other son. You know, like I just have a hard time seeing him leaving now that he has sort of accepted, you know, the role that he needs to take at this stage of his career. It's just going to come down to money, and like, do the Lakers end up just deciding, like, you know, if the Lakers just decide, hey, we're blowing the whole thing up, we're getting Giannis, it's like, do they still have room to offer LeBron something that's palatable at his end? Like, that's the only scenario where I see him not being back, is if like they make a major overhaul to the team that just makes it so that all they really have to offer him is the minimum. And then in that case, it's like, I don't know if that's worth it to him.
Yeah, and let's be fair. If he does leave Los Angeles when he retires, we know for a fact he's gonna sow his seeds there, right, and move back there. That's where
Yeah.
all the business is going. So it only makes sense. But Harrison, man, we appreciate it. You really, gave us some great content for the present. Before we get you out of here, just reflect a little bit. You've been a long time Laker fan, and you know you worked for the team in a lot of different roles. What's your favorite Laker moment?
Oh, that is a good question. You know, for me, it's the 2010. I think the quickest one that comes to mind is 2010 Game 7. It was like an atrocious basketball game for any neutral observer, arguably set the sport back, like the amount of misses that were going on there. But like, you know, there is nothing, and I don't know if you guys have experienced this in your life, like there is nothing like having your team win a game like that, where like the entire time you felt like you were going to throw up, and like, this is the ugliest basketball I've ever seen. And like, oh my God, I can't believe that they made it this far. They're one game from a title and they're going to fall short. And then to come back and like hold on and win it. And, you know, it's Kobe's 5th ring to pass Shaq. And like, you know, 2000, that season was a really hard time for me, like personally in my life. Like I graduated high school, broke up with my high school girlfriend, was really, you know, just young Harrison was in his feelings. And like, you know, having that Lakers team as like an outlet to like enjoy, of like, okay, at least I have this, like the Lakers, that like, to me, that's what sports are all about. And like, you know, it's like having something like the way that this group of people that you have no connection to at all, like, can lift up your mood and spirits, and, you know, make you feel like you're a part of them and you're rooting for them, and like you would die for those guys, and, you know, all of that stuff. And so, you know, for me, it's probably that. You know, it's still like surreal in some ways, like thinking back to like who I was then. And like if you would have told that kid that he was going to be like, you know, in the Lakers locker room in like 5 to, you know, 7 years, whatever it was from there, like I would have been in disbelief, because like I would have just been like, okay, like, you know, did I marry someone who owns the team? Like, I don't know, like how did that happen? I had like no plans of like being you know, a journalist or anything like that. I was going to school to be a psychologist, and, you know, just eventually like hit a level of math courses that I was not going to be able to surpass. I don't know how good you guys are at math. I am not. And so I got to research methods as for my psych major, and I went to class that first day, and he was explaining, he's like, okay, it's like statistics and psychology, but it's going to be, you know, like the hardest final from that class, but that's like the baseline that that we're starting at. And I was like, I'm good. I think I'm going to drop this class and get my money back. There's just no way. And so, I was sort of out, but like the Lakers have always been something that, and like sports and basketball in general has always been something that I have has been an outlet for me during like tough times or times when I was questioning things. And so like the fact that I just get to like watch and talk about the Lakers and like, read basketball writers and stuff like for my job is like so cool. And like, I'm just unbelievably lucky.
Absolutely, and we really appreciate you for taking some time with us today, Harrison. We also appreciate you for and just checking my notes here, verbatim saying horse placenta, Clint Capella, don't matter, Lakers in 4. Was that the exact words?
you need that clip. Horse placenta, Clint Capella, it don't matter, Lakers in 4. There you go.
Incredible stuff. Thank you so much, Harrison. Appreciate you.
Been a pleasure.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you.